All right, welcome to Super Simple JavaScript Programming. This is intended for my Redlands Conservatory class, but as always, everybody is welcome to follow along. So in the first video, we discussed just very briefly how to set up your computer so you can edit Java. And we had two different ways to do that. One was to use an online editor, which keeps us all on the same page and makes certain that everything we go over works right the first time. And the other way is to use Notepad, which was also covered in that first video. So if you missed the first video, go back and take a look at that if you need to know how to set up your computer for Java. Now, just very quickly, again, this is the web page to go directly to the tutorials page. And the concept here, I think, is going to be a really super fast way to learn Java and that JavaScript. And the reason for that is that I'm going to go through the lesson very quickly so you get a look at everything and you see a demonstration. And then on each of our lessons, I'm going to have a download link where you can download the little like 7 or 8 pages of all the code and all the explanations of the code that we're going over in the video. So you have a printed copy. So the idea will be that you will see the video in brief, and by downloading for free from the page the little booklet that goes with it, you're going to very quickly have a reference source that you can turn to the page and write your own code super quickly. So just as a very speedy review, this is our main class page, nooncode.com/RC. You click on programming and you have the JavaScript programming pages here, day-to-day lessons, and then also our online editor. And I've already got it up, so let's just zip right to it. So when we started the first video, I talked about that you would insert your JavaScript in between the two commands that say script. Now in the online editor, they also have the option of just putting your script in by double-clicking where it says script. And this will save your JavaScript as a separate file. And then when you run that index file, which is your web page HTML file, as we discussed in the last video, it will call upon the little JavaScript that we're writing. So in brief, what this allows us to do is to have a page where we just see the JavaScript code and you don't have to see the HTML around it. So I thought that would be easier for visualizing the code. So here we go. We'll go double click on the script. It starts you off with a little bit of script. So let's go ahead and we will erase that, and we'll start with the very basics. I mean, every time you start a new language, it seems like one of the things they want you to do is they want you to do a hello world program. So here's two easy ways to do that. Document.write hello world is the correct way for telling JavaScript to print something to the screen. So when we hit preview, we look down below and da-da, there is hello world, the output from our little program. Can't get much simpler than that. So let me show you a second way to do that, which is a way that can be more attention grabbing, but is not necessarily the coolest way to put out output to the screen. And it's one of the few things in JavaScript that I'm not super wild about, and that is to use alert or window alert. So once again, now the command is window alert, and as I said, when you download the little booklet, the reference source, don't worry too much about the nomenclature here because the booklet is going to have this all laid out for you so you won't forget exactly how we did it. So this is just your quick glimpse so that we can do it as fast as possible. I'm hoping to teach you the entire JavaScript core language in something like 15 minutes. If we go really fast, I think we can get that done. 15 minutes. That's crazy, huh? Good deal. And it won't happen unless we get right to it. So window alert, when we hit preview, what do we get? A window pops up. And this is what I was saying I'm not super wild about as far as JavaScript goes. For safety and security purposes, JavaScript announces where the window is coming from. And I just thought that's, it's just kind of uncool. Might be a way around that. We might learn that in the future. And there it is. Hello world. So it's a pop-up. So the Windows alert is a pop-up, and the document write is a way of doing this and having it just appear straight on the screen. So let's go ahead and we will jump to our next subject. That is how you output text to the screen. The next thing we always want to learn are variables. Variables are just simply a way of storing a variable, storing a value on your computer. So here we go. We have to declare it. So we say var for variable, and then we'll name it. In this case, we're going to name it my value. It could be named anything that you would like it to name. Then we tell the computer my value equals 5. So from now on, anytime we refer to my value, we should see the number 5. So we'll go ahead and we'll use that document write to see what the value, my value, prints out to be. We click preview, pow, comes out at 5. Now here's kind of a fun trick. If you cruise up here and you go ahead and you add +1, you can add a math function to that. We'll preview again. 5 plus 1 is 6. So you can actually do a little bit of math here, or you can have another variable here if you would like. There's a little slightly different structure, but and so you can have that output value change. You can make a little calculator program. It's just that simple. So let's go ahead. We'll erase this again. And I will show you a slightly more sophisticated use of variables here. And variables, one of the super cool things, one of my favorite things about JavaScript is that normally in most programming languages, you have to declare your variables and tell the language that you're working with what the variable is going to be used for. Is it going to have letters? Is it going to have numbers? We call that a string, or you can a numeric value. And you also sometimes have to define exactly what range that number is going to be in. JavaScript completely handles that for you. That's a huge plus and a heck of a lot of fun. So here we go. We're going to say variable my value again. Once again, my value equals 5. And then we're going to say write that value. So it's going to put out the value of 5. It should print 5. And then we're going to try some different math functions here, just because I thought this would be something handy to learn. So it's going to say write the variable 5 plus 5, and then write the variable 5 times 5. When you use the star, it's times. And then write the variable 5 divided by 2. I wanted to divide by 2 so we'd have a little more interesting output. So let's go ahead. We'll hit preview. And kapow, 5 plus 5 equals 5. 5 times 5 equals 25. Divide by 2 equals 1, and it rounded it for us. Now, there are ways to make this output a heck of a lot prettier than that, and we're going to get into that down the line. But for now, I'm just trying to make it as brief as I possibly can, since you have the concept. And just quickly, while I'm loading the next sample here, the way that you do output that text so that it looks pretty is to use HTML commands. Super duper easy, one of the easiest languages ever conceived, and we will get into that soon. But I want you to have a quick overview of all the commands for the core of the language. This is a comment. Now, I have lots of students, and I used to be guilty of it a long time ago, of not putting comments in a program. When you surround a statement, something that you might write, some text, with this set of symbols, and close it with this set of symbols, the computer completely ignores it. And that's why a lot of students, to save space, to save time, they think, I don't need to put in stuff that the computer's going to completely ignore. But what this does is later, when you look back at your program, you go, wow, I remember now what I was thinking. You'll write little notes to yourself. And when you're looking at a big page of code, it's so handy to find notes from yourself that tell you what to do. So if we preview this, nothing will happen. There we go. Nothing appears down there. It's just completely ignored. But we could go ahead. You can detach this last part, move it down a bit, and anything typed in between these two brackets is going to be ignored by the computer. So we can just type whatever notes to ourselves, and I'm a slow typist, so I won't waste your time. And once again, that can be in your program. It will just be ignored. Nothing appears down there. But later on, you can go back and say, oh, I was thinking, that's right, that's what I was thinking. Or if someone else is trying to work with your computer code, it is so wonderful for them to find comments and realize what different parts of your program might have been doing. So the other thing with variables, well, you know what, we kind of skipped ahead when I went to comments. So we'll just consider that a little break along the way. I wanted to show you one more thing with variables before we move on. So previously our variable was a numerical variable, and therefore you could do math, addition. I'm going to have you guys write a little calculator program in the future. You're going to have a blast with that. But you can also have string values, just meaning text. So here we go. We'll do it again. We'll say variable my value. We're declaring that we're going to have a variable called my value, and then variable my value 2. So we're having two variables. One is value, my value, one is my value 2. And then we'll say the first one equals hello, and the next one equals world. So you can already see where we're heading with that. And then we have that document write, which is going to output it to the screen. And we simply say my value plus my value 2. It should put hello and world together. So let's take a look. We will preview. So there you go, hello world. So just like we put mathematical things together, you can do the same with strings or text if you want to refer to it that way. There are also a whole bunch of really cool commands we'll get into later where you can dissect these strings. You can search for different characters in a string, or you can put them together, take them apart, truncate them. So for any type of word processing you want to do, you guys are going to have all those commands. Wow, we have really cruised. We are a good portion of the way through the entire core language already. So the next thing I want to show you guys is a function. Functions are also super easy and super cool when you're programming in JavaScript. So here's a function. A function is simply naming a little grouping or a section of code. So maybe you'll write some code that, say, flashes a light off and on. You don't want to write over and over and over again in your text, flash the light off and on. You want to go ahead and declare that that little section of code can all be run anytime you name it. So here we say the function is going to be named hello, and it's going to write the word hello anytime this function is asked to do its job. So the way we ask it to do its job is I guess I'll have to do this manually. We say hello. I had everything else cut and pastable, but this one I didn't. And this is how you call it. So we just type in hello, and so anytime this appears anywhere in our big giant long program that we're going to write, it will zip back up to this function and it's going to write hello. So let's take a preview and see if I got it right. Hello, kapow. It popped right up. That is a function. Function's super easy and super fun. Oh, and then the students, this is always the favorite of every student. Every time we do this, everybody gets a kick out of it, and they have found that they can wreak some havoc with it. And I think that's part of the reason everybody likes it, and that is a loop. Now, a loop is a way of telling the computer, and they are very, very useful in programming, to do something over and over again. You can tell it to do it 10 times, 100 times, 50 times. Anything you're doing that's repetitious, it's important. And actually, just about everything that executes in a program usually executes from inside of a loop. So here we have to declare a variable so that that variable can change each time through the loop. We want to have our variable become a little different so that we'll eventually exit the loop. And you'll see what I mean here. So we're going to use I. Back in the olden days of programming, I was told we always use I because I is for integer, which, you know, really doesn't matter, but that's how it is. So we'll say I equals 10. And so our first statement there tells the computer to make a loop, a for loop, that's going to start at 10. The next line is going to tell the computer, as long as I is greater than 0, I want you to keep doing the loop. So in other words, it's going to count down to 10. And then the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to tell it each time you go through the loop, we want you to take I and have I equal I minus 1. So each time, there's a trick way to do that you'll also find in the notes that's a little bit faster than this, but I wanted to write it out the longhand way to make it obvious. So we're going to keep going through the loop. Now, the loop is after the for statement, and there's a while loop. There's several different types of loop. Once again, we'll get into those later, and you'll see them in the documentation. You can do almost anything with a for loop, which is why I'm covering this as the core. But this little bracket and that little bracket, anything that appears between those two brackets is what is going to be executed over and over again. And those brackets can be as far apart as you want. You could have it do a very complex program. In this case, it's going to do it 10 times, right? So let's see what happens. We're going to hit preview. And pow, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. It went through 10 times, and each time we did that document write, and we had it write the value of I, and then this little BR in quotes. That's an HTML command. I wanted to clean this one up, make it pretty, that put the carriage return in, so there was a space in between each number that popped up. We are almost all the way through it. Can you believe it? So we are going to cruise down now. Oh, you know what? We are through what most people consider the core of the language. But one of the things that frustrated me about any other video I saw as far as pertaining to the core of the language was that almost all those other videos did not tell you how to input anything into the computer. And you can't really do much of anything unless you're going to input something into the computer. So let me go ahead. I'm going to cut and paste here so that we, again, save a little bit of time. And I've come back, as you can see, to the index, which is the HTML view. And the reason I did that is because the way you input text into JavaScript, and the reason all those other tutorials didn't cover it, is because you actually use the web page and the HTML language to create what people see on the screen, to create the blanks and to create the text, and then your JavaScript kicks in and it handles the processing of those things. So let's zip through this. So this is just a basic HTML document. We tell it the body comes here, and here this is an HTML command to create a button. So we're going to create a button, and it's going to say click to enter your name. This is an HTML command. Again, this is all going to be covered in the notes in more detail. This is your quick overview. And then here's that script command where our JavaScript is going to appear. Here's the ending script command of the Java. So here's what, when the button is pressed in HTML, here's what our little Java program is going to do. So let's go ahead and hit preview, and we can see how this works. And watch how neat and tidy this is. Click to enter your name. We click it, and it pops up a text box, and it assumes our name is Darth Vader. So you can tell I'm excited about a movie that's on its way. Can you guess what that movie might be? Yeah, not too tough. But I'll enter a different name instead. We'll say our name is Kirk, and we'll just break ranks and be a real geek here and do more of a Captain Kirk. I say okay to Kirk, and pow, it says, hello, Kirk. How are you today? So take a close look at this code. You can look at it in the notes. You can freeze this frame and take a look at it. You can very quickly see that what happens is we're using a flow control statement here, which we're going to get to in just a second, which is if person equals null. You know what? We're going to get to the flow control in just a second. So let's go ahead and we'll zip ahead to that. But this would be how you would input a text box. You'd create it in HTML, and then you would do your script and your function there. So zooming over, I'm going to show you one more example, which is a little more sophisticated. I just didn't want to jump too far ahead there. So I'm going to load another form, and you'll like this. So the two primary ways that I know of to enter something into your program are going to be with a button box like that, or in this case, you can also, using HTML, lay out a form. This is another popular way of doing it. So this is a form which is created in HTML, and again, I'm going to let you take a close look at that in the printed notes or by freeze framing here and going through it, but you basically have your script, which is your JavaScript, and you have your HTML, which sets up a form. So take a close look at this, and I'm going to go ahead and preview it, make sure that I type this one in right. There we go. So type in a name that you have always liked. I'll say George, George. I'm going to click enter, and it's going to poof. You are now George. Turn me into George. It's a magic trick as well. So those that know me will know why I did a magic trick there. So it's once again, here's the beginning of the script, and this is HTML at the beginning, and then in between the two script commands here, this is our whole JavaScript right here. It's super short and super simple. The rest of this is all just HTML form. So it's really not something we're directly covering in the video, but we will cover it in the documents and the notes. So the whole script for everything we just did is simply here. And we said function get name and document enter name. And this is how we're going to load it in from our HTML file. And then we simply said poof, document name, enter name, and it outputs it to the screen. So I do see why other videos didn't necessarily go into this, because that is a little bit more complicated than just covering the JavaScript commands. And I'm also seeing here that I've missed one thing that I wanted to go into. Sorry, that does lengthen the video very, very slightly, but I forgot to give you flow control. I don't know how that didn't get copied into the things that I've been punching over. So I'm just going to zip down to it right now, and I'm going to show you guys flow control. And okay, so here's that last item, and then in less than 18 minutes we will have gone through the entire core of the Java language, and you'll be ready to rock and roll. So heading back to our online editor, we're going to go to scripts. I'm going to erase the original script that comes with it as usual, and we'll put in a very short script here. And you can see that this is an if statement. So throughout your program, as far as flow control goes, you're going to want to have certain things happen when certain conditions come up. So if this, then do that is all there is to an if statement. Very, very useful. So here we have if 4 is greater than 3, then it wants to say to the screen, 4 is greater than 3. So the way an if statement works is you have your if statement and your condition here, and then you have these brackets, the curly Q brackets. There's probably a fancy name for those. And anything that appears between the two brackets, any code there will be executed if this condition is true. So in this case, 4 is greater than 3, so we should wind up having that appear. So let's go ahead and run it. We'll do preview. 4 is greater than 3, so it pops up with that alert and tells us that. So that's all there is to an if statement. One little thing that I might add to it would be, as far as basic if statements, something that everybody likes to do is an else statement. So let's do that very quickly here too. So if 4 is greater than 3, then it's going to do whatever's in the curly Q brackets and say 4 is greater than 3. Else, it will say, wow, 4 isn't greater than 3. So this is an if. It'll do, if it's true, it'll do this. Otherwise, it'll do this. It could be otherwise instead of else, but that would be a lot more letters. So let's go ahead and we'll change the condition a bit here. So we'll change this to 2. So it says if 2 is greater than 3, then print 4 is greater than 3. Else, say, wow, 4 isn't greater than 3. So at this point, since 2 is less than 3, it should execute the else statement. So let's take a look. Wow, 4 isn't greater than 3. Last time I did this, it was funnier, but you know what? I'm still laughing. So that is it. We've covered the entire core of the language. I've got the online little booklet for you to download so that you can reference each command, and you've pretty much got everything you need to design anything short of graphics in a JavaScript program. Thanks for watching.